It's the Veterans Radio Hour. Brought to you by Dallas Corporation for all your corporate printing needs. And by GIM Productions, creating internet solutions. Websites can do that. Now, stay tuned. The Veterans Radio Hour is next on the Veterans Radio Network.
Tango Charlie Bravo, you're a go for the Veterans Hour.
So your company has a website. We are all familiar with how the web can be used to showcase information. But did you know the web can also be used as a medium to actually do something to help your business? GIM Productions delivers custom web-based technology and applications to meet the needs of your company. We have the experience and the expertise to deliver web applications, e-commerce solutions, and interactive multimedia. GIM Productions can help you in making difficult technology decisions. We work to make web technology work for your company, and we will be there along the way to support you as you grow. Our comprehensive team includes talented programmers, software developers, graphic designers, and network specialists that strive to bring you the best. Contact us at our toll-free number 1-887-256-6914 or email us at info@gimproductions.com. Websites can do that.
Welcome, one and all, to the Veterans Radio Hour. It's our tribute to all of those who served our great nation's armed forces, past and present, and their tremendous accounts of heroic duty and bravery. With your host, Brigadier General Dave Grange. And now, coming to you live from our Veterans Center studio, here is General Dave.
Good evening. This is our 20th show, and General Dave is on a special mission, so he will not be with us tonight. But you can tune in and be with us again next week when General Dave will be back in the main seat. I'm Kenny DeCamp, filling in for General Dave, and happy to do so because tonight's show, Sources of Commissions. How does one become an officer? We've got some very unique guests with us. Before I give you their names, I want to let you all know if you'd like to call in on Radio Land, toll-free number 866-928-2329. If you're on the veteransradiohour.com live with us in the chat room, you can hit the discussion board and type in your questions and come up live with us here. I'm going to be having one of our special guests with us tonight working that chat room board. With us tonight, Colonel Jerry Wulf. He is a retired United States Marine Corps officer. That's going to be very unique because he's a graduate of the United States Marine Corps Command and Staff College and also a graduate of the Communication Officer School and the Industrial College of the Armed Forces. Served overseas, I know for sure in Korea, with the Fleet Marine Force Artillery Units, and as I believe also as a forward observer. We'll be finding out more with him in a moment. Second with us, Colonel Tom Rendall. He'll be on the chat room. He is United States Army, and he's with the 2nd Brigade, 2nd ROTC region. He is the brigade commander, someone who served with General Dave in Bosnia, and I also know that he's did some service in Haiti a little while back. Next to us is also Lieutenant Colonel Dan Bogojevich. You've heard his name a few times on our show. One of our good people has helped support us. He's unique. He's been commissioned in the United States Army Illinois National Guard back in 1968. And he was with the 108th Support Battalion, Operation Officers, 179th Infantry, served with 101 Airborne, and of course the 1st Infantry, the Big Red 1. And over in Bosnia was the Assistant Political Advisor, more than likely to General Dave, among others. Along with him, we're going to have Brent Kaufman. Brent's a United States Army Reserve. He is presently a captain. Brent is from West Point originally. He is now working as the admissions liaison officer to the academy, primarily West Point, but he's going to tell us about getting your commission through the academies. And finally, on the phone, we've got Lieutenant Mike Sparks coming in with us. former NCO and officer, U.S. Marine Corps. Mike is one of those guys who has done a lot to not only help this program out, but also has worked with General Dave on some books. He's right now the lead on the first Tactical Studies Group Airborne based out of Fort Bragg. It's a not-for-profit think tank. He comes up with the answers and ideas that he's going to be with us in regards to getting his commission as well. To begin the show tonight, I think we're going to do a special dedication. Tonight's dedication, we're going to recognize every newly deployed officer that is just now being sent to the Middle East. We wish them all well, Godspeed, safety, and hooah!
Here is today's military quote of the day, brought to you by support from retired Lieutenant Commander Adrian Rubinkowski.
Our special quote of the day was recorded in March 21st, 1939, by a special woman born on May 1st, 1907, who died June 17th, 1986. And it is a quote that is sung and is said nearly every day by tens of thousands. And that quote is, "God bless America."
You're listening to the Veterans Hour with retired Brigadier General Dave Grange. And now, back to the broadcast.
And once again, General Dave is not with us tonight. He's on a special mission. And so we're talking about how do you get your commission? How do you become someone like a General Dave? We're going to start off with Colonel Jerry Wulf. Jerry, I believe, is a retired colonel who received your commission to the United States Marine Corps Officers Candidate Program. Can you tell us about when and how that all took place for you?
That's right, Kenny. Thank you. I came from a line of military officers in my family, and I decided that when it was my time to go into the armed forces that I wanted to be an officer. The Marine Corps attracted me due to its traditions and its history and various other important things. So when I finished college at Northwestern University, I went into the officer candidate program. And I really didn't know much about it, but it just sounded good. So I was sent to Quantico, Virginia, Marine Corps Schools, it was called at that time, where the officer candidate program lasted for 13 weeks. And it was much like a enlisted boot camp, only the DIs were a little meaner.
To try to make you a better officer automatically.
To make a better officer, so you know how it was. The requirements have not changed much over the years for your acceptance into the program. You must be a college graduate or a student in good standing and have an ACT combined at 45 or an SAT of 1050. Pass the physical examination, which is standard for all Marine officers. Also, there's a requirement that you pass the physical fitness test, which all Marines must successfully complete. It involves a 3-mile run and a carry of your one of your associate buddies for a number of yards, plus pull-ups, chin-ups, set-ups, and so forth. So it's a pretty good indication of what your physical condition is. And I must comment that before you embark on this, you must get yourself in very good physical shape, because there's no makeup time like some of our professional sports people do today.
Were you doing sports during your Northwestern stint as well?
No, I was a bandsman.
A bandsman?
I was a bandsman, and I had the distinction of playing in the first Rose Bowl band.
Oh, no kidding. Good. And what age, so then you went into probably OCS at 22, 23?
That's right.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Let me move on for a minute to Dan Bogojevich. He's a retired lieutenant colonel who I know also went to OCS, but I think yours was a little bit different. Tell us the difference.
Yes, it was. Mine was through a state program, as a matter of fact, here in Illinois. And I had enlisted in the Illinois Guard in 1965, achieved the rank of E5, and then decided that I wanted to do a little bit more than just be a soldier. I wanted to see if I could contribute something more. So I applied for the OCS program through the state. Now, the differences were basically you had to still test, you had to do the physical test, you had to go through a number of boards, and then if you were approved, you went to Springfield at Camp Lincoln. That's where the state program was run. And the way the program worked there was that you would go for a 2-week annual training, which would be your first part. And then you had 12 monthly weekends also at Camp Lincoln. And then you finished with another annual training. So it took a year to get through. And in retrospect, I think going to Benning might have been a little easier than going home every month.
Benning was 13 weeks then, the same
yes,
as Marine Corps?
I think it was basically the same program. But once you were in and your head was screwed on right, it's probably easier to just continue than to go home after 2 days and then have to come back 30 days later and think, oh my God, these guys are these tactical officers are waiting for us to arrive. But then after the second annual training, you were commissioned on the last day of that training, if you made it successful.
Well, we'll come back to both the OCS colonels here because I found out that there's basically 3 sources of commissions. One, of course, the OCS, where we just talked about both now Marines and National Guard. And then there's also, of course, the service of commissions in academies and through the multiple academies there are. And then there's ROTC, which most people have heard of. From what I understand, that 70 to 75% is ROTC, and 20-25% are the academies, and then another 5% are what you two gentlemen were involved with, and that's the Officers Candidate School, the programs that they have. So I think I'm going to jump to the highest level right away and move into Colonel Tom Rendall for a moment. Tell us about what it means to do ROTC and the difference between our OCS, ROTC levels.
Well, thank you. ROTC is something that's a very old program. In fact, the first ROTC type program was founded in 1819 with the starting of the famous Norwich University. It was actually grounded by a gentleman who was a former superintendent of the newly established military academy at West Point, a fellow by the name of Alden Partridge. But it wasn't until World War I that the country realized it needed a regular source of commission into generally what would be the reserves. Over time, though, the Reserve Officers Training Corps has provided not only reserve officers to both the Army Reserve and the Army National Guard, but also to the active Army. Presently, we're missioned, if you will, which is to say that we're required to provide to the Army 3,900 commissioned officers a year. These officers all come from various schools. We have 270 major ROTC programs across the country now, divided into 3 regions and 13 brigades. But like in many other environments, things are changing, so the number of brigades and regions will change shortly, as do policies from time to time. The interesting thing about ROTC also in relation to the other programs is that there are soldiers that elect to go into ROTC from the Army, and they're given time to do so under what's called green to gold. We also have many former enlisted people who have gone to college and elect to join ROTC. These people comprise some of the most experienced. What ROTC does for a student, though, is to provide a learning environment for a number of years. Can be 4 years, could be 3, could be 2, and perhaps even 1 for the really accelerated cadets. The average high school student that wants to join ROTC would generally want a scholarship and would begin as a freshman. They finally contract to join the Army, though, about the time of junior year. There's possibilities then to get full scholarships that provide tuition fees, books, and a stipend for all 4 years of college. There's also the possibility to go to college while a freshman and elect to join ROTC and begin scholarship as a sophomore, possibly even as a junior. You also have the option, if a person was to join ROTC, of simply being in the program, not needing a scholarship, or perhaps having a scholarship from another source, and in that case they get a stipend. In each case then they get a chance to elect a particular branch and to decide whether to go reserve component or active component. Qualifications, ages, and other things are always waiverable, so I'm not going to state what those are. We like to think about, as all service academies do, and we try to model some of our procedures on what service academies do. We try to get the scholar, athlete, leader, and that's someone who has leadership ability and demonstrates it in high school, someone who's a scholarship who has above a 2.0, and we want above a 3.0 if we can get it, and then also has athletic ability and demonstrates such by playing on team sports, as well as can pass the Army PT test, which is a bit simpler, the one that you described, sir, but is still a good gut check for a new student. And we're finding that kids today don't necessarily come with the tools.
Colonel Tom, you mentioned that they get to select the branch of service they want to go into. Define that a little bit more for me.
Well, it's an interesting thing. I was having dinner one night at a Marine Corps ball, and one of the Marine wives said, how come all you have branches and we just think we're Marines? And I think that's an interesting comparison. Yes, you do have a branch in the Army. There's a great deal of identification with the Army at large, but officers in the Army, as well as the enlisted soldiers, tend to identify with a branch, not first, but kind of co-equally. Within the branches, you have choices as an entry of combat arms, combat support arms, combat service support arms, combat arms being infantry armor, such things as that, combat support, such things as military intelligence and communications, combat service support, generally logistic and medical type things, many others as well. There are numerous branches. These are all actually available at the Army ROTC website, which can be found by just doing a web search for ROTC, and then you can check on branches, and you could even go to the branch website, so people that are interested can get more detailed information than we've got time to put out here.
Good. We'll come back a little bit more, because I think I also have heard the term junior ROTC, and we'll find out more about that in a little while. Right now, let's bring in, of course, the last and probably the most famous way of becoming an officer, and that is to attend an academy. Army Reserve Captain Brent Kaufman is with us, who's the admissions liaison officer. And I guess you have to explain to us, who are you being a liaison for?
I'll be glad to, Kenny. Thank you for having me tonight. As a liaison officer for West Point, my role is to be in the middle of the application process. So I'm serving both the candidates and the admissions office. So that's a unique role, and one that I enjoy very much. I've been a liaison officer for 4 years, and want to mention what Colonel Rendall was discussing. The program he mentioned about ROTC is a fabulous program, and my role as a liaison officer is to make sure that my candidates are specifically informed about West Point, but also generally informed about ROTC and the other service academies. So I'm here tonight to shed more information about the 5 federal service academies.
Yeah, well, name those 5 for us, if you would.
Those 5 academies, of course, the United States Military Academy at West Point, the United States Naval Academy at Annapolis,
Thank you.
United States Air Force Academy at Colorado Springs, Colorado, the United States Coast Guard Academy at New London, Connecticut, and the United States Merchant Marine Academy at Kings Point, New York.
Meaning that the Marines come from...
Great question. And
What?
Great question. We got some reaction. We got some reaction in the audience, and that's a great question, because Marine Corps officers come from Annapolis, the Naval Academy, or through Navy ROTC Marine option. Now, the Merchant Marine Academy is not traditionally the source for Marine Corps officers, but there is flexibility in which branch of the service they choose to go into. Most Merchant Marine Academy graduates tend to go into the maritime service. But they do have an option to transfer to another branch of service.
And you, of course, yourself then have graduated from West Point, I would imagine.
Correct. I graduated from West Point in 1993, served 5 years on active duty, and now continue to serve in the Army Reserves as a liaison officer.
Excellent. Mike Sparks, you're on the phone with us? Lieutenant Mike Sparks, are you there?
Yes, sir, I am.
Good. Now, I'm bringing you on because not only because you've helped out the show so much, and I know that you as an officer also were a Marine non-com or non-commissioned officer. Tell us how you became an officer, or the difference between what you were non-com-wise to the officer level.
Well, I was in the Marine Corps Reserve, and while I was in the Marine Corps Reserve, I found there was a certain limitation to the kind of training you got and opportunities to be in charge. So when I was going through college, I enrolled in Army ROTC and had to make a tough choice whether to go into the Army side of the house or go to the Marine Corps OCS program, which we call Platoon Leadership Course, PLC. So I went with the Marine Corps option, and in my junior year, I went to PLC Junior, which is a 6-week OCS, and then went back the next summer to PLC Senior, which is the second 6-week. You could also go for the 13-week installment straight through. I'm sorry, 10-week installment straight through. That's another way of doing it. So it's both called OCS, but there's two versions of OCS, PLC Junior and PLC Senior. And then after you're done with that, you go to a 23-week officer basic course, which the Marine Corps calls the basic school at Quantico, Virginia.
And Quantico, Virginia, I think I've heard that term someplace before.
Yes, the earlier officers mentioned that. So the idea on that is that everybody would get a basic grounding in all the MOSs and specialties that are in the Marine Corps, so you have a general knowledge of it. But you would then, at the end of that 23 basic course, go to your branch. So the Marine Corps has branches. We just don't wear them on the collar like you do in the Army.
And Colonel Wulf, this is the same Quantico's?
That's right. Quantico is now the Marine Corps University. Back in my day, it was Marine Corps schools, but it's graduated to be a university, and it has all the basic officer training facilities, plus advanced schools. That's Command Staff School and the Officers Junior course and so forth. So it's the educational spot for the Corps.
Very good. We're going to be coming back. We're going to take a little bit of a break now. I'm going to do some support work here, as well as we're going to come back and talk about furthering the sources of commission, especially with some of the academies, trying to find out just how complicated it is to get into one, and do you really need to be a friend of somebody or what? And in ROTC, we got to find out a little bit more about the junior style of ROTC, and then we'll talk some more to our OCS officers as well. Today is our 20th program of the Veterans Radio Hour. Of course, there's many people to thank for it. Our staff primarily here, and the growth that we're going to be taking over the next year. We are also all waiting to see what is going to be happening with our military over the next few months. Military.com, one of the people we like to salute, because they salute all who have answered the call to our nation's service, connecting the military community with many benefits of service. The National Vietnam Veterans Art Museum in Chicago, with over 800 works of art from 160 artists, including the ceiling sculpture Above and Beyond. February 9th at the museum, Ordinary Heroes, a book and a movie and a speaker, all on the Medal of Honor recipients. February 12th, we've got the great Colonel Bud Day. He's on his way to the Supreme Court. They've already called for a rally on the steps of the Supreme Court. I'm asking all who hear my voice, send your support and your prayers. Colonel Bud's got a class action suit for 22,000 veterans over the age of 65 who benefits are being reduced. All of these veterans are retirees, more than 20 years. Visit the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund at vvmf.org to see Night Vision, a limited edition that they have, and to raise some money. Next week's program, we're going to explore the possibility of war in Iraq. General Dave.
At ease, soldier. The Veterans Hour with General Dave will settle in again after a short
break
on the Talk Radio Network.
You're listening to the Veterans Radio Hour. We are on the air every Sunday evening at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. We're delighted to have everyone listening to us this evening on the internet, as well as on more than 50 stations across the country on the Talk Radio Network. I just want to take a moment and say a quick hello and thank you to all of those service personnel who are deployed and being deployed to the Middle East. Our thoughts and our prayers are with you. We deeply respect you for what you're doing on behalf of our country. We thank you and we salute you, and Godspeed. The Veterans Radio Hour is hosted by retired Brigadier General Dave Grange. Dave Grange is on a special mission this evening. He's not here, but he will be back next week. So hello, General Dave. We look forward to having you back. General Dave recently retired after 30 years of service. He commanded at all ranks up through Major General. He has 3 Silver Stars. He earned 2 Purple Hearts. He's presently Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of the Robert R. McCormick Tribune Foundation, among other activities. You know, the Veterans Radio Hour is a show by, for, and about veterans. We're here every week with General Dave's guests, a distinguished panel each week, having a roundtable discussion on a wide range of historical and contemporary topics of vital interest, both to veterans as well as to active service personnel. You know, to read a book about World War II or the Vietnam War is always interesting, but to hear a live interview with someone who was there, such as General Dave's recent special guest, retired Colonel Bud Day, America's most highly decorated flyer, and to have the opportunity to call in and to talk with him is something else again. It's the stuff of which great radio is made, and we are so thrilled to have guests each week of such distinguished backgrounds and with such interesting information, creating wonderful shows which are all archived, incidentally, right there on the internet. You can look up any of our previous 19 shows. This is our 20th program. You can click on any show that you like, and you can see what all the topics are, as well as hearing the current week's show, or I should say the previous week's show, which is broadcast on a 24-hour basis right there on the website. So if you missed anything tonight and you'd like to hear it again, or if you want to tell someone about the program who you think would be interested in it, please direct them to our website, which, as you know, is www.veteransradiohour.com. Let me mention that the Veterans Radio Hour is sponsored by GIM Productions and by Dallas Corporation and by Pabst Blue Ribbon Beer. We thank you for listening to us. Tell your friends. Our audience grows each week. Stay with us, and we'll be back on the air very shortly.
Weigh anchor, mates. The Veterans Radio Hour now continues full speed ahead on the Talk Radio Network.
Aye, aye, sir. The Veterans Hour proudly presents our military hero's story of valor.
Our hero today is someone that I've always looked up to and thought about, Lieutenant Colonel Theodore Roosevelt. He distinguished himself by acts of bravery on July 1st, 1898, near Santiago de Cuba, in the Republic of Cuba. While leading a daring charge up San Juan Hill, Lieutenant Colonel Roosevelt, in total disregard for his own personal safety and accompanied by only 4 or 5 men, led a desperate and gallant charge up San Juan Hill, something all of us know. Encouraging his troops to continue the assault through withering enemy fire over open countryside, he faced the enemy's heavy fire, and he displayed extraordinary bravery throughout the charge and was the first to reach the enemy's trenches. His leadership and valor turned the tide in the battle for the San Juan Hill. I have to admit that I found out that the President of the United States of America authorized the act of Congress on March 3rd, 1863, to award the Medal of Honor, and it wasn't until January 16th, 2001, that Theodore Roosevelt posthumously received his Medal of Honor. The first person to receive the Medal of Honor and the Nobel Peace Prize.
The Veterans Radio Hour salutes the Active Service Person of the Week, made possible through the support of Pabst Blue Ribbon Beer. As they say, PBR me, ASAP. Pabst Blue Ribbon Beer, available at your local retail outlet.
we try to recognize an active duty service person, usually someone who's deployed. And I thought I had someone that I then received word that he's on special ops, and I'm not to say a thing about this person deployed overseas. So I had to come up with a real quick active duty person that I personally know. So Colonel Tom, tonight we're going to recognize you as our active duty person of the week because of all these fine officers that you're helping to create for the U.S. military.
You're listening to the Veterans Hour with retired Brigadier General Dave Grange. And now, back to the broadcast.
We're back. Dave Grange is out on a special mission. I'm here today with Colonel Jerry Wulf, a officer candidate from the United States Marine Corps, Lieutenant Colonel Dan Bogojevich, retired, a special commissioned officer in the National Guard. I also have our active duty person of the week, Colonel Tom Rendall, who is the 2nd Brigade, 2nd Region Brigade Commander for ROTC. Captain of Reserves, Brent Kaufman, who is our liaison for the academies. On the phone with us, Mike Sparks, Lieutenant out at Fort Bragg. And we just got another call in. Jay Greeley's with us. I'm going to be bringing him up in a minute because I think he's got a couple commissions over on his end of the phone. But before we do, something came up that I'm going to bring to Colonel Wulf real quickly to see if we could all talk about, and if the Colonel would start it off. One of our members in the audience told us that there is another way of receiving a commission besides ROTC, about 75%. The service academies, about 20%, and another 5% out of OCS. There's a battlefield commission. Can you first explain a little bit of what that means?
The battlefield commission was used mostly in Korea and World War II, which were large conflicts. And it went to people who had, as enlisted folks, had demonstrated great courage and leadership, and also good knowledge of their military occupational specialty field. So they had the potential for leadership and were selected out to do that as a result. So we have not had that in the last few years, but it's possible with what's going on today.
It would be possible then?
Yes.
Because nothing like that happened with Desert Storm, Desert Shield, or anything. Not that we know of. Well, let's go back then to the academies for a minute. I want to finalize a little bit of knowledge that we need on them. How do the academies develop leaders specifically once they're there? I mean, is it just strictly a college-based and a lot of heavy duty, as we see on the television, a lot of people just being belittled the first year they're there and trying to get through it to the 4th year?
Well, certainly that's a component of the first year, to go through that transition process from civilian to military member. You alluded to it perfectly. The purpose, general purpose of the service academies is to develop leaders of character for their respective service. So by way of example, I'll read the West Point's mission, or at least a portion of it, is to educate, train, and inspire the Corps cadets so that each graduate is a commissioned leader of character, committed to the values of duty on our country. The other service academies have a similar mission, and again, the general purpose is to provide those leaders of character for their service.
And who are these men or women that attend, or how does one become a member?
As Colonel Rendall alluded to, ROTC is looking for that scholar, athlete, leader. West Point is looking for that same person. Now, I'm proud to say that there is a strong partnership that is increasing over the years between ROTC and the service academies at selecting and identifying and evaluating these candidates. Basically, we're looking for that well-rounded person, typically a high school student, can be somebody who's served, who's already enlisted, could be somebody who has spent a year at college, potentially at an ROTC program. So there's many components to the application process, and I would be glad to cover that in a couple minutes, but it usually takes me a good amount of time when I'm meeting with candidates. But generally, we're looking for scholars, somebody who has demonstrated an academic level of excellence, not only in their classes, but in their test scores and through their teacher recommendations. We're looking for people who are athletically inclined, people who are varsity letter winners. They also have to pass a physical aptitude exam, which is a 5-event physical fitness test. We're looking for leadership qualities that can be demonstrated by participating in a club for several years, then rising to a leadership position in that club. Now, the common components of the service academies are the medical qualification. The medical qualification is handled by an agency called the Department of Defense Medical Evaluation Review Board, and the ROTC programs utilize that same program. And for the service academies, a nomination is required, except for the Coast Guard Academy. It does not require a nomination.
And who nominates?
Nominations can be of a couple forms, but what's important to note is that everybody's eligible for at least eligible to apply for a nomination to 4 different people. These would be the congressional-based nominations. That's the local U.S. representative, the 2 U.S. senators, and the vice president. Now, everyone's eligible to compete for those nominations. If the candidate is currently a service member or their parent has retired from the service or is currently serving, they may qualify for a presidential nomination, which is a different form of nomination.
Mm-hmm. You know, let me bring it back then to OCS for a second, especially Lieutenant Colonel Dan, if you could. Are we still having OCS National Guard trainings going on today as we speak, with all the deployment that's been going on with the Guard and the reserves?
We are. As a matter of fact, I wanted to mention that it's a very important thing to understand that regardless of the source of commission, the training is at such a high level that you can take, regardless of the branch, regardless of the source, the people that come out of there are probably the best trained, most qualified young leaders to serve anywhere in the world. And it's whether it's an academy, whether it's an ROTC program, whether it's another branch, really is not a material factor. Mm-hmm. We all undergo basically the same type of training. The training is constantly going on at the ROTC level, academy level, branch level, and OCS level, probably even with more intensity than maybe a short while ago.
Mm-hmm. Jay Greeley, are you there with us?
Yes, I am.
And Jay, can you tell us, are you a commissioned officer?
Well, yes, I am. I was a commissioned lieutenant out of Norbert College.
ROTC program?
ROTC program. I think I was the last ROTC 4-year student that didn't get a scholarship. but I did. No. The Norbertines took care of me. I was a pretty good. I was the last one to use their aviation ROTC stipend. Mm-hmm. That we were given, and I then later became an Army aviator, and I served in the 82nd Airborne and 1st 17th Air Cav. My question for Colonel Tom is, did he know how many generals we got from that little school at St. Norbert College? You might not. Stump the
That's
band.
A question for Big Steve, who I happen to notice is on the website. And in fact, if you want to know their shoe size and perhaps their service number, I think he's probably got those too.
Yeah, I just mentioned that because when I showed up to the 82nd Airborne, I reported in to the CAV squadron commander who asked me if I ever played any football because I couldn't fit in his chair that he had me sit in, and I played center. But to make a long story short, he asked me what school I went to, and I said, well, you probably never heard of it, St. Norbert College. And he said that he just came from a division meeting when the general turned to his chief of staff, who was General Lutz, and I think his chief of staff was Matikak. General Lutz was his ADC. Colonel Holliday, who now was a General Holliday, became General Holliday, was his Davardi commander. His medical commander was General Matikak, who was colonel at the time. All of them from St. Norbert College.
Wow.
So he said the question that I believe it was General Merriman said, where is St. Norbert College? And General Lutz told him, General Lutz at the time told him, don't worry about it, it's just a little West Point of the North. And we don't have to play Navy every year.
Now, Jay, being commissioned, I think, do you have a son that's also commissioned, don't you?
Yes. There's always been a Greeley in the Guard. And dating back to my great-grandfather in Racine, Wisconsin, who was a captain in the Wisconsin Guard. And I served as a active Army guy assigned attached to Wisconsin Guard out of Madison, Truax Field. My son is in the Virginia OCS program right now. He's also a graduate student at VCU. And we're pretty proud of him. He's an 88 Mike. He enlisted, and then he's been serving with the Guard.
Yeah, I think I heard that in a commercial driving up to Wisconsin, something about Greeley's in the Guard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel real proud of you. Mike Sparks again, you still there with us?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay, what's happening down in your neck of the woods in Fort Bragg? Are they still putting OCS things together in that area?
Yes, they are. We have a 14-month program extended that the National Guard runs that you have to go 1 weekend a month, and it's kind of a hellacious thing that people are put through. But something I wanted to add, there is another way of becoming commissioned. Before 1957.
Okay, Mike, we're going to get back to that. Okay. When we come back after this commercial, we're going to come back to you, and we'll start right off, and you're going to tell us about in the 50s this other way of becoming commissioned.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we'll be right back on the Veterans Radio Hour.
You're listening to the Veterans Hour on the Talk Radio Network.
You're listening to the Veterans Radio Hour. We are on the air every Sunday evening at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. We're heard, we're heard both on the internet as well as over the Talk Radio Network on 60 or 70 stations across the country. So hello to everybody listening to us. This evening's program is entitled Sources of Commission, or in other words, how do you become an officer? We have some very interesting and highly knowledgeable and informed guests who are giving us all of the important information about becoming an officer in the United States military. Incidentally, if anyone listening would like some further information or has a specific point that they would like to have answered, please send us an email. We will see that the proper people hear about it and that you are sent the information that you want. If you have a comment or a question, email that in over our website, and we will forward it to the host, who, if it's an appropriate question, will bring it up for discussion at the round table, or even possibly if you want to call in, we may be able to get you on the air with an appropriate question. Veterans Radio Hour is in our 20th week. We began broadcasting, as I say, 20 weeks ago. The program has had an excellent reception, and we're very, very happy about how everything is going, and we thank all of our listeners for their support. The Veterans Radio Hour is sponsored by GIM Productions, by Dallas Corporation, and by Pabst Blue Ribbon Beer, PB Army ASAP. Let me just very quickly acknowledge some of the people behind the scenes here that make the show possible. Carl King, the engineer and production director. Lambert Matias, the studio manager. Kenny DeCamp, of course, senior producer. Ron Eli is the webmaster and chat master. Ron Seguski is in charge of the phone lines. I'm Fred Cutchins. We thank you for listening. We encourage you to tell your friends about the program and have them listen in. And, of course, all of our previous programs are available over the website on the archive. Thank you, and we'll go back on the air shortly.
The Veterans Hour now returns to full readiness on the TRN Talk Radio Network.
Okay, we're live, and I'm coming back. We had to leave on a commercial break there on the radio land, and you know we're going to stay live after we go off the air at 9:59. Radio-wise, we're going to stay live for another 15 minutes or so on our internet stream, which usually we get in about 50 countries during the evening. Mike Sparks, lieutenant out there, help us out now. You were going to give us some information.
Yeah, in 1957, the Russians were first to put a satellite in orbit. But before that time, we had an actual singular rank structure where if you were progressing in rank as a sergeant, you had a choice, and it was expected that you could become an officer. Ever since the Summons of the Trumpet, which is a book written by General Maxwell Taylor, called for a professional officer corps and separation of the two career tracks, you've had this polarization that's taken place where you have enlisted men that are having young college kids basically be put in charge of their platoons, and there's a certain discontinuity there, you might want to say. And one of the ways we could fix that is with what we're doing now is simultaneous membership program. If you're a reservist, you can stay in your reserve unit and participate in ROTC as you're going to college. So if you're an enlisted man and you've actually experienced enlisted boot camp, basic training, and you're participating in your unit, but you're also at the same time while you're in college going through officer training, you'll find that the men will respect you more because you've been where they've been through, and you have understanding as a man, as a person, as a leader, what their world is like. So I would like to see that as a standard procedure, if it would be possible, that in your freshman or sophomore year, and you're in ROTC, why not go to basic training for your summer, instead of maybe, spring break, and become an enlisted man and join the local Army Reserve unit or National Guard unit. Get that experience, basic training, participating in your unit.
We've got some feedback playing right now here, and I think we're going to be bringing it down a little bit. Let me go around the table for a minute, because what we want to do is get about a 1 minute, as we close out of the radio program here, about a 1 minute statement in relationship to each one of these sources of commission. And I'm going to start right off the bat with the academies and Captain Brent Kaufman, especially about the myth that people have about being connected. When you talked about it, I mean, if I know a senator, I'm probably going to be able to get in.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Kenny. I'd like to debunk the myth on this important program that you don't need to know a congressman. You don't have to intern for a congressman. All that stuff is immaterial, and the reason why is Congress people have gotten smarter over the years, and now what they have done is installed an independent competitive process for their nominations. So what they have is they have a panel of residents that will review those files. They make the recommendation to the congressperson, and that person smartly signs those nominations in accordance with those panel's recommendations.
And Lieutenant Colonel Dan, what would you say to any of the people that might be interested in the National Guard today?
I think it's an absolutely wonderful program and a great way to get your commission if you so desire. It's a little bit more of a challenge because of the length of time it takes to get that commission, but the end result is extremely rewarding. You are able to still be home with your family during your participation in the program, and it's just great to have that source as well as all the other sources.
And Colonel Wulf?
I think that the commissioning process and all these services is somewhat similar. However, we in the Marine Corps feel that it's a program that leads to other leadership. You'd be amazed at the number of CEOs and heads of business and industry are former Marine officers, and there are several of them right here in the Chicago area. So it is a good training for further advancement in civilian life. I'd like to bring up one more point that we didn't really get to, and the fact is it's not a commissioning program, but it's a good pre-commissioning program, and that's a junior ROTC. We have we have 3 Marine units here in the Chicago area. However, and most of the folks are with the Army. We have the only Board of Education run military academy in the United States, down in Brownsville. And it's doing a good job of preparing people for later military careers.
And our ROTC colonel, the junior ROTC.
Yes, just to mention something that we do, it's the Junior ROTC program. It also came under the same Defense Act of 1916. It's generally a citizenship program, although it used to be providing training and a source of commissioned officers as well as, or experience for commissioning as well as regular soldiers. The interesting thing about Army is it's not the only service that does ROTC, and the folks need to check out, if they have desires for Marine Corps, Navy, or Air Force, the other ROTC programs. And finally, I'd like to say that there are programs by which a person can be in the Reserve or in the National Guard and can also go to college on the Guard or the Reserve and get commissioned through ROTC to go into either the Reserve component or active duty. And these details are available at these various websites. Also, someone could email me if they wanted some additional information. Thank you.
Jay Greeley, can you give us a little bit of heads up for 30 seconds?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm really impressed with the crew, and I think they've laid out the perfect case. I coach hockey, and now we've got a number of kids that are so interested. We've had the opportunity as a retired officer to do some enlistment oaths. And I'll tell you that the National Guard here in Virginia has been, you know, they talk about the individuals that are going to be called up. Well, a lot of them are students.
And
so they're doing great.
Good. Thank you, Jay. Hang on with us today. Mike Sparks, if you could help us out, too, about all the things you understand in being commissioned.
I would enlist first from high school in an Army Reserve or Marine Reserve enlisted status, and then go into the Reserve Commissioning Program, whether it be OCS or state OCS. It's an excellent way to get experience of what the enlisted men experience, so that when you do become an officer, they'll respect you for having walked in their footsteps. Well,
I thank you very much on that. We're going to be winding down the rest of this show on the radio in just a few moments, and then it'll be approximately a 10 to 15 second breakaway that will then continue streaming live on the veteransradiohour.com. So those of you on the radio, if you want to get back onto your computers now with us, we'd appreciate it, and you can get right to our discussion board. We thank you very much, and this is an Over and Out tonight on the Radio Talk Radio Network, and we'll be back in just about 20 seconds. Okay, we're back. I thank you very much. This is now the easy flow of the game. I'm going to just read something that Bob Gensch and Lieutenant Colonel Dan were able to turn me on. It's a pretty long sermon, but I'm not going to read the entirety of it. I'm just going to read what I thought was the emphasis that makes a lot of sense about what's going on today in our world. And it's something that goes like this. It's from John Hagee. It's the soldier, not the reporter, who gives you the freedom of press. It's the soldier, not the poet, who gives you the freedom of speech. It's the soldier, not the campus organizer, who allows you to demonstrate. It's the soldier who salutes the flag, serves the flag, and whose coffin is draped with the flag, that allows the protester to burn the flag. Lord, hold all of our troops in your loving hands and protect them as they protect us. Quite a bit of sense there, and of course with soldiers, you have to realize that every soldier needs a command, and that command has to be that officer, so the training that officer has. One thing I was talking for a moment with Colonel Wulf about just for a few moments was the relationship of officers, and sometimes the different feelings between the guy who was from West Point, the 20-day wonder, I think, or second-day wonder we used to call. What was it? Oh, yeah, the 90-day wonder. We used to call them in Vietnam. And then the difference with some of the ROTC guys who just had so much intelligence, and sometimes nobody believed they had any common sense in the guys. Could we talk about that for just a moment, anybody?
Well, I was going to bring up something that Mike Sparks talked about, and that was enlisting in the Reserve or Guard is an excellent way to see how soldiers work, what the jobs are, what your responsibilities, requirements are, and then go into an OCS program I think you truly do get a different level of respect from soldiers because you have been one of them. You've done the jobs that soldiers do. And I think that in their minds, they'll do the job that you ask them to do because they know that you've done it. And I think Mike Sparks touched on that just at the end of the broadcast. And I think that's a very important issue that can be handled through a state program or an OCS program, because a lot of those men and women who go into those programs tend to have been enlisted prior to going to get a commission.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Is that Big Steve I hear breathing in the background?
You got it, Mac.
There he is.
Hey, listen, I sent you an article here a couple days ago from I believe a colonel in the Air Force, Brian Scholl.
Okay.
You know, he was shot down, almost burned to death in his plane. Wasn't going to make it back flying. It was a great article. It was about 10 minutes long. You had to read it, but I can email it again to some of your folks on the show and give it to General Grange and also to Tom Rendall. But a great story about a colonel in the Air Force, Brian Scholl.
Okay, and I thought you had another special officer you wanted to tell us about.
Well, you had Frederick Funston, who was a cowboy enlisted in the Spanish-American War in 1898, had no military training whatsoever, advanced from PFC or a private all the way up to brigadier general, and commanded all land forces at the Battle of Veracruz in 1914, and was going to be shipped overseas in the First War when he died of a heart attack at the age of 51. But there was one other person, a Marine, and you know how I love Marines.
Yes, I know that.
But a fellow that enlisted in the Marine Corps at the age of 16, became a captain at 19, commanded the Marine forces at the Spanish Civil War, and then fought in the Philippines and the First World War. Double Medal of Honor winner. No formal training, military training, but double Medal of Honor winner, Smedley Darrington Butler.
Yeah, Colonel Tom just guessed that one. Wait.
He does. Well, let me give him one they can't guess.
Well, Steve, I already got the two you sent, which was Fred Funston, who was actually also commanding the rebels when Theodore Roosevelt won his Medal of Honor. You can see a depiction of him in that great movie, Rough Riders.
Right.
And he was then also the guy that went into the Philippines in about 1902 and brought out the rebel Emilio Aguinaldo, who was the head honcho of the Philippine insurrection. Interesting character, came from Kansas.
So here we have some more great officers. You said something a minute ago, Colonel Wulf, about one of these guys, Gimlet? Or?
Well, Smedley Butler was a very austere type of person who was very accomplished and very heroic, but he had a very stern look. So he was known as Old Gimlet Eye.
Gimlet Eye, I think he liked to drink a few gimlets.
No, from what I heard, these officers don't drink.
Not since they invented the funnel.
Okay, well...
Listen, do you want a couple more? I know a couple other...
No, hang loose. We're going to get back onto one. We still got a couple guys, because I mentioned that Mike Sparks was at Fort Bragg, and I think I was wrong. It's Fort Benning?
Well, I was stationed there, and now I'm here as a reservist, near the Fort Benning area.
Uh-huh. And that's where you become more acquainted with the OCS program that still continues at Fort Benning.
Yeah, the one at 14 is 14 weeks at Fort Benning, straight through. You residents stay there and go through it one shot.
I just want to comment on something that was said earlier. It's always been thought that officers from different places matriculate differently in the Army, and of course that's even compounded by individuality, and personality, and such. But we're working very hard to make sure that officers these days come in, and if they're not from OCS and they don't have experience, we try to give it to them while they're in ROTC. But you got to remember too that just like the sports player that you knew in high school that was the 150-pound halfback and went on to college and played soccer, while the big guy who couldn't play football in high school is now the star quarterback in college, many people matriculate through these things at different rates, and so after a few years, you really can't tell where somebody came from. And I don't know anymore there's a clear delineation. What's interesting is that the graduates of the service academies generally will have an engineering background, and that sets them apart in many ways from OCS and ROTC. ROTC is starting to shift towards engineering as a kind of a main focus, but I personally was a liberal arts major. I was appointed to the Naval Academy. While I was at Knox in Illinois, I received a letter from West Point saying that even though the Navy didn't want me because my eyes were bad, they'd sure take me, but I was already at Knox. I joined the ROTC program at Knox as a junior. Many people do the same thing. I got a chance to look at the matriculation process for both firsthand, and they both were excellent. And the Navy met me with great folks that told me what the career would be like, what football would be like. I mean, just like what you're doing, and it's a great program, and I'm sure you do the same thing. So just remember this. Yeah, there's kind of a rivalry, but we're all green, we're all Army, and we're working very hard to build the kind of ethics that the Marine Corps has developed and kept all these years, and the Chief of Staff of the Army has made it a big positive that you're not just a soldier and then you're finished. I mean, they've got all kinds of initiatives to make us feel more like we're part of a culture as opposed to just an organization you're in for a few years and then you go off and watch it from the sidelines.
I want to bring Jerry Wulf back in once more in regards to, is there an OCS group that you originally were with, that you graduated with? I mean, the way there are reunions, for instance, from high schools and colleges, alumni. Is there an alumni with your group?
Yes, there is. It's mostly with the graduates in the special basic course. And matter of fact, I'm going to one of my reunions in June and see how many folks will show up. I got a roster the other day, and I was shocked to see that about 30 of them were deceased. Mm-hmm. But yes, there is an alumni organization, and it's very tight-knit.
And what year did you graduate from yours?
1952.
52. Yeah, one of the things that I know the general's brought up a few times on air with us is the number of veterans that are passing away each day.
1,000 a day.
Yeah, I've heard between 1,000 and 1,500 constantly, and it's something. That's why when I brought up that story about Bud Day a little bit ago and what he's doing for the veterans right now for the benefits that are trying to be taken away from the old retirees. You know, it's something sad because it's at that time of your life that you need that medical benefit the most. And the appeals court came up and literally said that the recruiter had no right to tell anybody that by signing up they'd have medical benefits for life.
Well, that's possible, but I think you have to reflect upon the fact that the membership of Congress that makes a lot of these rules is severely declining in people with military experience.
Correct.
And what we need to do is to look at that in our electorate.
That's really true. You had something there for us, Captain?
Yes, I'd just like to offer a couple examples. Colonel Rendall mentioned the Army looks at it as we're all green, we're all serving together as one Army. A couple examples of that partnership. When it comes to admissions for West Point and ROTC scholarships, there's communication between Cadet Command and the Director of Admissions at West Point, and that is for those candidates who are qualified but not selected for West Point, we share that information with ROTC Cadet Command, and they are looked upon very favorably, and most of them receive four-year scholarships. A second example of partnership is a few years ago, West Point started to bring in a few ROTC cadets during the second summer at cadet field training. This is commonly referred to as Camp Buckner. And so from various ROTC campuses across the country, we have some ROTC participation at West Point. And the whole purpose here is for these two different sources of commission to share experiences with each other. So when they do hit the unit together, there is less of that animosity. I think we're making excellent strides in that direction.
Sure sounds like it. Mike Sparks, we're going to be winding down a little bit here, so you've got any last things you'd like to talk with us about?
Well, yes, sir, I would. I would like to see the cadets or the candidates, as they're going through their college, to be professionally in tune with the modern battlefield. The modern battlefield's gotten more complicated. So I'd like to see some online resources so that they have a reading program, a list of books that they have to read, and as they read these books, they do book reports, and when they do the book reports, they're turned in, so it becomes part of their military education. I've always admired ROTC for doing that, but when you're in the OCS program, particularly in the Marine Corps, you're kind of floating during this school year. You don't have any sustainment, land navigation training, or any reading program. It's a lot of money to have an actual ROTC program at the college, but it seems to me that you should be able to set something up online to sustain the military training of the officer candidate between, his summer training sessions. And of course, one thing you can do is put it online. So it's already there.
Excellent suggestion. Very, very good. It's probably coming out of your think tank there, I would imagine.
Yeah, we got a pretty big book list.
Yeah, very good. And Jay Greeley with us.
Well, I see here from my question what region. You mentioned that Tom covers Wisconsin. Oshkosh now, I guess, is the center for St. Norbert, University of Wisconsin, Green Bay, ROTC region. You've got some great folks up there working. I had the opportunity to visit them and work with them over the last year, and we put together a veterans mass and reunion where we had a homecoming lined up all of the veterans from St. Norbert College, ROTC, dating back from World War II to Bosnia, and we had something like 87 people that showed up. We also dedicated a plaque that's in the chapel there.
Mm-hmm. Jay,
with all the names of those that were lost in World War II, Vietnam, Korea.
Yeah, that detachment there at Oshkosh is headed by Lieutenant Colonel Tony Blando, and he's a great guy. He's got a great program. And you highlighted something I said earlier. Although we've got 270 major hubs, each of those hubs has 2 to 3 and sometimes more satellite programs, such as Oshkosh to St. Norbert. So, there's a heck of a lot of ROTC out there, and it's a great program.
Well, the Norbertines have always had, that school used to turn out, every single student was an all-boys school back in the 40s, had to be ROTC. As a matter of fact, the science building was built by the federal government, which is very unusual. And some of the Norbertines were some of the main scientists that had worked on the space shuttle and other projects for the government in the 50s and the 40s.
Mm-hmm. Colonel Wulf, you had something.
Yes, how do you get information about Marine Corps commissioning programs? There is a group called the Officers Selection Office, which is generally situated with the recruiting office. But they are not manned all across the country. But these OSO people, as we call them, visit various college campuses and are available for questions and have the literature and all the things that you need to make a decision. So the OSO is the person that you should be interested in.
Uh-huh. You were mentioning something too, Captain, about some kind of a conference coming up or something, ROTC?
Correct.
Are these held all over, or is this a specific one? Or
we briefly mentioned JROTC. Not surprisingly, Chicago has the largest JROTC contingent. I believe they have approximately 8,000 plus in JROTC, and even a middle school program that flows into JROTC.
Really?
The point that I wanted to mention was that Chicago JROTC is having a college fair Saturday, February 22nd at IIT. And so obviously the Chicago area JROTC cadets are invited to that. And I'm not certain if that is a public event or not, but certainly is worth attending that.
These are kind of public or even
high school level
conferences. They go on probably all across the country, or is this something special to Chicago because of how many junior ROTCs we have? Who knows?
The exact number of programs I'm not sure. We have several dozen schools with JROTC in Chicago. As far as college fairs, of course, this one is unique because it's catered for Chicago ROTC, and this is their second annual Chicago JROTC College Fair.
Well, we're winding down now here, and if anybody else has the last couple things they'd like to say, we can probably do a couple more minutes worth.
I think I'd just like to cite an example of the type of training you get regardless of what your source was. On a personal level, I retired in '87, and New Year's Day of '97, as the Rose Bowl game was beginning, I got a phone call, and 30 days later, I think I ran into Tom Rendall tromping through the mud in Bosnia. But after being retired for 10 years and going for a 2-week refresher course at Fort Benning and a couple of other places, Hohnsfeld, Germany, and things of that nature, it all came back. Mm-hmm. It took after being gone 10 years, other than the technology, which took a while to brush up on, but that 30-day period, all the previous training came back, and you just fit right back in.
Very good. Well, I'm going to wind it down now. I want to really thank and be happy to add to the group Colonel Jerry Wulf and Captain Brent Kaufman. And what I mean by the group is, since we've started the show 20 weeks ago, the general's had a lot of help. I've had a lot of help from a lot of good people. Some of the people that have been on with us for a long time is Big Steve Sumsky, who's been one of our main correspondents and a man who knows a lot about the military. We've used him as our military enthusiast. Jay Greeley, who's out on the coast and in a special position in his career now and has been very helpful to us. Mike Sparks, who has done and worked a lot with General Dave and a lot with tactical things and giving us information that we need here. Colonel Tom, I think out of 20 shows, has been at 15 of them live with us, and Lieutenant Colonel Dan has been with us since the beginning of the show, is one of our original founders that's helped us to kick off, and I think he's getting married soon too, so I'll congratulate him on the air for everybody to know. Yeah, Steve.
Kenny, you know that questions about the 2 officers or 2 men that went through 1 year of Virginia Military Institute and later became generals. Well, one was Army, one was Marine Corps. The Army guy was General Courtney Hodges, which a lot of people don't remember. He had 1 year at the Virginia Military Academy, commanded 1st Army Group in France in World War II. I can tell you who's in 1st Army Group. I can also tell you the other Marine was Chesty Puller.
Chesty Puller. Colonel Wulf just said that name before you did.
Oh, he did, huh?
Oh, yeah. I think this guy would have a good go-around with you.
I'm
and he's bigger
more
than you,
willing
too.
to go ahead on anything that he would like to talk about any time.
Big Steve, you got to understand. You got to understand, though, Big Steve.
Yeah.
Patton did do a year at VMI. He may not have been the one that you knew about, but he did do a year at VMI. Now, I got another one for you.
He did 1 year at VMI and then 4 years at the Point.
Okay, but he still did a year at VMI, so the answer's still Patton. It may be the other gentleman, too. Courtney Hicks Hodges, great officer, but you're right, it was Patton. Hey, I got a question for you. Sherman said something about a very famous officer who went on a mission to the North Pole, that he only had 1 command, and he ate that. Who was that, do you know?
Perry, I believe it was.
No, it was Greeley.
Really?
It was a Greeley?
Oh, God, looks like I missed one.
A Greeley in the Guard?
Yeah, Fort Greeley. It was a very famous mission to find the North Pole, and unfortunately, things got rather rough.
He was the first telephone pole, wasn't he?
Captain?
Hey, I resemble that remark.
I guess we could have a military trivia question maybe every week.
Yeah, I think we'll start ending the show with that. Yeah, I'm sure we could talk General Dave into it.
All right, that'll be great.
Wait, Captain got something to say for a minute.
Yes,
Sure.
on one more serious note, it was interesting talking about where famous generals were before. And few people know that Norman Schwarzkopf spent a year at Valley Forge Military Academy. And that reminds me that the 3 large service academies, West Point, Annapolis, and the Air Force Academy, they have an alumni scholarship program. And they have 35 to 50 slots for candidates who have shown incredible leadership potential, but are just shy on academics, and they'll offer these scholarships to these exceptional candidates, and they'll spend a year at a junior military college such as Valley Forge Military Academy or New Mexico Military Academy, and then matriculate to the Federal Service Academy the following year.
Excellent. And with that note, I want to thank all of you gentlemen for being here with us tonight. It's been a great show. I hope that some of our veterans out there have heard it and remembered and reminisced over some of their commissioned or their commissioned officers that they served with, as well as some of the younger people. I know that WRMN 1410 AM in the Chicagoland area will be rebroadcasting the same show this Tuesday at 9 a.m. and then also at 9 p.m. Tuesday night. And hopefully we'll have some young people tune in on either one of those shows and get inspired to become commissioned. Thank you again, and this is the Veterans Radio Hour. Thanks to our live audience and everyone else in this house. We're out. Thanks, Carl.